All right, we are back on the Andre Duke Show with Carter Smith. I apologize, everybody, off the rip. I had been out for a couple of days and my camera's not working. So let me leave the stage. This is not ideal to start the show off. Okay, everyone, I guess I will be back in 1 second. Um, that's not what I want. Maybe. Hold on, everybody. I got to restart my computer. I think that may have fixed it. Nope, did not fix it. I've got to completely shut down and restart. I will be back as quick as possible. All right, let's see if that fixes the. There we go. All right, we're ready to go now. I am your host, Andre Duke, on the Andre Duke Show with Carter Smith. Sorry for the choppy startup. That is that is something that we are kind of dealing with here every now and then. That does happen. So, but if you can do me a favor, if you stuck around this long, hit that like and subscribe button. Help us grow this channel. We are going to be streaming the most of the games tomorrow, starting at noon with Farmageddon, Iowa State, Kansas State. We'll be starting that tomorrow at about 11:50, and then I'll probably be with you most of the day or the rest of the day, capping it with the Hawaii Stanford game. Real interested to see that, to see what transpires there. So there is that. Sorry for the last couple of days. Was not able to podcast. Had some things come up. So that's kind of what's going on with me. That's what happens when you're a one-man band at the moment. But Carter and Richie will be back. Richie's in the middle of something right now, and then Carter will also be back soon as well. So it's just kind of a perfect storm that we got going right now as far as things and everybody having stuff to do. It's a one of those things that happens. But if you can hit that like and subscribe button and help us grow this thing, we'll dive into the first topic today. I know I brought it up here recently, but here's a list of the most claimed national championships. We got Auburn claimed their recent natties, Harvard, Minnesota, Princeton. I think it's interesting that they claimed the natties on this, and it's kind of, I'm not going to call it funny, but I would say that it's interesting, to say the least, that some of the folks that have claimed this, the people at Auburn, I think that one of the bigger things is that they need to, I'm not going to say justify it, but I'm just going to say that they've had this happen, and that they did it. And I don't know if it's a good for them or just what it is. I'm sure the Alabama fans are maybe going to poke fun of them, but also Alabama's on that list. So that is that. The bigger thing is that here's the look at the last couple starting quarterbacks for Ohio State. I find it kind of interesting. Julian Sayin gets named the starter. Pretty much, I believe Day took over in 17 or 18. So it goes Haskins, Fields twice, Stroud twice, McCord, Howard, Sayin. I find that quite interesting on how this has turned out, but that's just kind of what it is. That's just something to look at and to look forward to. Julian Sayin next week making his first start. And here's another fun fact on the Julian Sayin thing. In the last 20 years, when a QB makes his first start against the number one team, he's 0-18. I don't know if history is going to repeat itself, if history is going to be on Ohio State's side or Texas's side. But the thing with Arch Manning is that Arch has made some starts, and he's played in some big games. A lot of people will kind of scoff at it and say, how could he be the number one quarterback going into it? I guess I get it, but I see both sides of the Arch Manning thing. I look at the Arch Manning thing as a whole thing in totality, that it's either going to go really, really good or really, really bad. But Joe Klatt here has entered the chat with some of his 12-team predictions for the playoff. He's got Kansas State in there, Alabama. Depending on how tomorrow goes, that's going to be the whole year as a whole for Kansas State. A lot of people like Boise in this. I don't know what Boise State's got going, but I think it'll be very interesting, highly entertaining on the Boise State end. If they can repeat and make the playoffs. He's got Notre Dame, LSU, Michigan in there. I find Michigan being in there very interesting. I think Michigan has every tool to make it into the college football playoff. With the Underwood kid, a lot of people are skeptical on Underwood being the number one guy. I think it's more of a wait and see. He's got Ohio State in the final with a first-year starter. This year he's got Georgia winning a game, Penn State losing to Ohio State, and Penn State basically winning the Big Ten. So that, to me, tells me that he's pretty much predicting them to win the Big Ten and Texas to win the SEC. If it's Ohio State or Oregon, I would say he's probably got a rematch of last year, because that would make Oregon slide. And then with Ohio State being 4, they would get a bye. Penn State would get a bye. I don't know how that computes because of the whole bye situation. But that's what Joe Klatt's got. He's got Clemson winning it all. I'm not shocked by that. So there is that. We turn our attention, since we're opening Farmageddon up. Here are the top-ranked teams, or where the top-ranked teams in the Big 12. Kansas State being the highest ranked in the ultimate, RJ Young's ultimate 136, but he's pretty much got them all grouped together. I'm actually high on Houston. I think Houston smashes their win total at 5.5. I bet them over this year. Kansas State's a wait and see for me. I want to see how Avery Johnson looks. Rocco Becht, a couple of those. Colorado, some people are bullish on Colorado. I don't know who they're going to start at quarterback. If I was a betting man, which I am, I think both quarterbacks are going to play against Georgia Tech. I would say Salter and Lewis are going to both play. That's just something that I kind of think that Deion's going to do to try to find a guy. Kansas is a interesting foe here, being ranked behind Houston. With Lance Leipold in KU, I think they were like 1-7 in one-score games, but they beat Colorado last year at Arrowhead. I think that Lance Leipold in KU has things going in the right direction. I think they're all pulling the rope the same way. They just got a $300 million gift, one of the biggest gifts in college athletics. They just built a new stadium. They're investing in their facilities. I don't see how it doesn't get successful at Kansas really, really quick, more than it has. I think Leipold is probably the winningest coach they've had there in the last 15 years, outside of I can't think of that guy. I want to say Rick Majerus, but I don't know if that's right. But the big old heavy set guy that was there. Um, Arizona comes in here. I think a lot of people last year were expecting Arizona to take a big step up. Um, they lost Jed Fish last year. TCU. Speaking of NIL notes, we'll get to that in a minute. Their starting quarterback has got I think he got 1.5 million in the for an NIL deal. So I think that all things being considered, I'm not shocked that Utah is ranked down where they're at. Same thing with Oklahoma State, BYU losing their quarterback, Cincinnati, West Virginia, and UCF. UCF was bad last year. It kind of fell apart for Gus Malzahn, and I think Gus kind of realized that. I don't know why UCF can't be a great job and watch Scott Foster is going to go there. I mean, after the tumultuous issues that he had at Nebraska, it's interesting. That's what happens whenever you go home and take your alma mater job. I just look at that and I think that there's a couple of coaches on this list that are right and wrongs, him and Rich Rodriguez. I think one of the things with Rich Rod is I believe that if Rich Rod had it to do over again, he would have stayed at West Virginia or campaigned harder to get the Alabama job, but I don't know what those two things look like. I mean, it's all retrospect. I'm sure if Luke Fickell would have known he was going to be in the Big 12, he probably would have stayed at Cincinnati. He had things cooking there, but also you got to remember he had Marcus Freeman as his defensive coordinator and Notre Dame with the number 4 recruiting class. It kind of makes you wonder. I'm not poking holes in the Fickell ship just yet, but Luke Fickell and Marcus Freeman split and the recruiting kind of falls off a map. I don't know personally when you were in the American, when Cincinnati was in the American, they were signing higher rated classes with Fickell and Freeman than what he's signing at Wisconsin, also being in the Big Ten. So that is also some food for thought on that end of the spectrum. But we will go now to some interesting things that I found today. If I can get it pulled up. Just some interesting NIL notes here for quarterbacks. Some of the notable guys: Bryce Underwood getting upwards of $3 million is what some reports. Pete Nakos, I believe, did a report on some of the highest paid guys. I believe the kid at Duke is getting $4 million. The kid at TCU is getting $1.5 million, but Carson Beck getting $3 million. Dylan Raiola getting $3 million. Aller getting the same thing. John Mateer, with everything that's happened around the Oklahoma, on the Oklahoma side of things, John Mateer 2.5, Diego Pavia $2 million. I think, out of all the guys on the list, Diego isn't getting as much as Carson Beck or Bryce Underwood, but I think on somebody that's transformed their career to make it interesting. I know the Any Given Saturday had came out, and a lot of people had a lot of stuff to say about Diego Pavia, but I kind of look at the Pavia stuff and say, well, this guy kind of kind of transformed his career, being at New Mexico State, going to Vanderbilt. Nobody knew who he was, wins the job, goes out there and wins, they've won at Vandy. I think that the Jerry Kill effect is real at Vanderbilt. I want to see what happens in the future, because I think there might be some jobs coming open in the SEC. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, if you're Arkansas, do you go out and hire Clark Lee? That's something that I don't think's off the table, because I don't think John Summerall is going to take the Arkansas job. I also don't believe that Kentucky has the budget or the stomach to fire Mark Stoops. So those are something of note there. Avery Johnson getting $2 million as well. Some of these guys that are the top rated guys getting, they're getting top dollar. They're getting, I guess, what the market says they're getting. So that's what it is. I just look at it and I think some people don't like it in college athletics that these guys are getting paid, but also you have to remember, when it comes to the college athletics, they're also getting a crumb of a crumb. To be honest, a $20 million payroll for your roster, whenever, TV contracts are what they are, like the Big Ten getting, I don't know, $7 billion over X amount of years. So the institutions keep a lot of that, and you got to keep the athletic programs running when you only have so few sports that that make revenue. So moving ahead a little bit to some notable names that are from the NFL into college football. Frank Reich takes the Stanford job after Troy Taylor is dismissed. Stanford is a current road dog in the game at 7:30 on Saturday night against Hawaii. I'm very interested to see what Stanford looks like. Frank Reich being an NFL guy, typically this doesn't work. You can see guys go from college to the NFL, and it sometimes doesn't work. But I mean, it worked out for Pete Carroll, Jimmy Johnson. Both have Super Bowls, so that is something to be said there. Coaches of note, also Barry Switzer in there as well. Coaches with national championships and coaches with Super Bowls. I believe there's only 3 that have done it. Folks in the chat can correct me if I am wrong. So, but Frank Wright leading the Stanford Cardinal. So that is where that is at. Eddie George comes over from Tennessee State to pick up the Bowling Green job. Typically, the MAC is a big springboard. If you recruit well, develop talent, win some games there, you're going to get a bigger job. I'll be interested to see how this goes. Eddie George is somebody that I have an eyeball on in the next 2 to 3 years, because if he does really well at Bowling Green, like let's say he wins the MAC in his second year, he's going to be one of the hottest names in college football. Him being in Bowling Green, the uncertainty, I wouldn't say it's uncertainty, but I would not be shocked if Ryan Day bolts to the NFL, to be honest. And then everybody will be banging the table to hire Eddie George if they're doing well at Bowling Green. That's just what that's going to be. Or if Ryan Day struggles, I could see Eddie George spending so much time in Knoxville, or in Nashville, I mean, in Knoxville, if it doesn't go well down there, which I hate to be the Tennessee hater, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's going to be a 6-7 win season. And is basketball here yet for the Vols? That's just kind of where I'm at on that. I think that there's going to be grumblings in Tennessee if Eddie comes out and has a great year at Bowling Green. Would not be shocked by that. Also, Arkansas being a player in that as well, because but the caveat with Arkansas is that if Sam Pittman wins 7 games, he gets an automatic 1-year contract extension. So that is something to be said there. I mean, we can roll through the Arkansas schedule really quickly. If I can get that pulled up in my trusty Phil Steele program, but getting where we're going, Arkansas is an interesting case study because they open with Alabama A&M, should win that. They open with Alabama A&M. That should be a win. They open with next game is Ark State, should win. I would say Arkansas is going to lose to Ole Miss. Now, here's the big one for Arkansas. They have to play Memphis. It's the first time under Sam Pittman the Hogs have met Memphis, but and I'm assuming it's at the Liberty Bowl. So if Sam Pittman can pull a win off at Memphis, he'll be 3-1. Then he plays Notre Dame, 3-2. Tennessee's a flip. Then he has A&M, Auburn, Mississippi State. He might drop 3 there. I think he can pick up Mississippi State, puts him at 4. LSU for me will be on quit watch. Sam Pittman, it ain't looking good for the Hogs unless he pulls some magic. But that's just some notable things there. I think LSU will be on quit watch because I think, like I've said in past programs, I think LSU can be leaving. They could be leaving Vaught Hemingway Stadium at the end of September with 3 losses. Because in their first couple, they have Clemson, LSU, Florida. Even though they have Florida at home, but if Brian Kelly's leaving Vaught Hemingway with 3 losses, that LSU team is definitely going to be on quit watch for sure. So there's that. Bill Belichick at North Carolina. Very interesting to me. I want to see that, Belichick being one of the greatest college football coaches NFL coaches of all time, 6 Super Bowls. How is that going to translate to the college game? I think that's something to be said there. I don't know what all that's going to entail, but I think the North Carolina Chapel Hill experience with Bill Belichick is going to be very interesting. I've seen some people predict all the way up to 10. He's going to win 10 games, 8 games, 7 games, 6 games. But it's really hard to predict the win-loss toss records. I think it'll be interesting because North Carolina kicks off Monday night, and I don't think they have a bye. They kick off Monday night of week 1. And I think what's interesting about that is Carolina's going to have they have an initial long week going into the first game, but they have a short week coming out of the first game. And I'll be interested to see how Belichick can deal with that routine, because instead of going to play games on Sunday, you're playing on Saturday. So you're moving really everything up a day. So how he gets these young guys motivated. Michael Vick at Norfolk State. I'm just going to throw this out there. If Norfolk State has a very, very good year and it doesn't go well at Virginia Tech, I can just already see it now. I'm just foreshadowing it. Michael Vick is going to the Virginia Tech people are going to be banging the table to want him back. They're going to want um, the Dion effect at Virginia Tech. I think it would be a draw for them. I think it would reinvigorate the fan base, especially if it goes well year one. Let's say he goes to the playoffs and rattles off 2 or 3 wins. So this day and age in the transfer portal, because Michael Vick being from Virginia, I think he's from Virginia Beach, maybe somewhere around there. I'm not 100%, but I'm pretty sure he's from Virginia. Um, so I think that it's just whenever you see this, you're going to get people banging the table for Vick. So at Virginia Tech, if they decide to make a move, but we'll have to see. And then you have Deshaun Jackson. Deshaun Jackson being the head man at Delaware State. Delaware State kind of fell on some hard times. They had that huge debacle in week 0 last year when they were traveling out to Hawaii. I think they missed their plane, and that just turned into a whole fiasco. And also, a side note, Clinton Portis is the running back coach at Delaware State. Deshaun Jackson. We'll see what that brings. I could see if Deshaun Jackson goes out there and has an exciting first year and maybe knocks off some people he shouldn't. He's probably going to get discussed for head jobs, but also Clinton Portis being there with him as well. Hugh Jackson taking over as the OC at Georgia State. I think that's an interesting note. I believe he was at Grambling for a bit, and now he is at Georgia State. He's kind of taking a step up in competition, being in the Sun Belt. I think that we'll have to see what Hugh does. I don't know how ambitious he's going to be. The things in Cleveland didn't go as well, but I mean, in Cleveland, what do you expect? That's just something where I'm at on it. Cleveland is not the breeding ground for success, although Kevin Stefanski is the Browns' winningest coach, I believe, in the last like 40 years, maybe 30 or 40 years. Stefanski has, I think he's won more games than Belichick in Cleveland, and Belichick got fired. So if that tells you anything. Matt Patricia takes the defensive coordinator job after Jim Knowles vacates it. A lot of speculation around the Knowles stuff at Ohio State. Here's my thing. Jim Knowles is from Pennsylvania. I don't think that was after the Oregon game, all the speculations, all the reports out there, people in the Woody that were sowing the discontent between him and him and Larry Johnson. I don't believe any of that. I think that Jim Knowles and Larry were good. I think it was mostly a day thing. Just the only knock I have on Ryan Day is I think he wears on people, and some of the sentiments that, Zach Smith from Minnesota Sports has put out there that, the patience just wore thin with Jim and Ryan. Am I shocked by that? No, because I think at a certain point, Ryan Day had so much immense pressure on him to win the game, win a national championship. They had a $20 million roster. Am I shocked that it ended up how it did? No, not at all. I just look at it and I think to myself that was not a marriage for the long haul. Jim Knowles is the highest paid defensive coordinator in the game. I think Pete Golding just got his extension. These D coordinators are interesting, to say the least. I mean, you see the springboard that it provided for Chip Kelly going to the NFL, being the highest paid offensive coordinator. So I think that Matt Patricia comes to Ohio State. Obviously, the tenure in Philadelphia, he got kind of, I'm not going to say jobbed into that, but the whole thing in Philly is I think he was just there being an analyst, and the Eagles decided to make a change at D coordinator, and they said, "Hey Matt, do you want to be the defensive coordinator?" We're really not giving you an option, even though you didn't coach this team all year, just kind of helping out on the side, being an analyst. So I think that he got thrust into that. The whole Belichick thing with having him call the offense, even though Patricia started in the NFL as an offensive guy. Um, I think that's at the end there. It got weird in New England um, by having Matty P call the offense and not the defense. That's just a very strange endeavor. So we'll see how that works out. But and then the um, Detroit tenure didn't go as well, but that was right before they hired the Spielmans. They made the change with Patricia up there in Detroit. I know a lot of the Detroit fans and Michigan fans hate Matt Patricia, so this just adds fuel to the Ohio State Michigan rivalry, in my opinion. Not to mention the investigation into the Connor Stallions, whether they did it or didn't do it. I pretty much have moved past that. I don't care anymore. The people that still want to bring it up and talk about it, well, the NCAA rendered a decision. That's what it is. Like it or lump it, that's what they got, and they got what they got. So there is no changing it. And also, why we are on the Ohio State train here with Matt Patricia. Matt Patricia should have some of the best personnel in college football. Ohio State's recruited really, really well for the last couple of years. So I don't see how it's not successful, in my opinion. But, you know, you have issues, but Matt Patricia's called Super Bowl winning defenses. There's no, in my opinion, no reason to hate him just yet. Let's say Texas scores 25, Ohio State loses by a field goal 26-23 or something. They're going to want to run Matt Patricia out of town after 1 week. That's just how it's going to go. Hartline will get a pass to a certain extent, but that's just me on the Ohio State thing. And then also assistants in different places. Tony Alford. This has been a sticking point with me when it comes down to the Ohio State stuff. Tony Alford was labeled as lazy, didn't want to do anything, lazy on the recruiting trail, could not recruit, couldn't do this, couldn't do that. Well, now that push has come to shove, Tony Alford has signed the number one running back in the country, only with not even really being at Michigan just under a year. So take that for what you will. Maybe the kid will be great. We'll have to see. But Tony Alford signing the number one running back in the country. I believe it's since June, Ohio State hasn't signed a 5-star, but their recruiting expectations are through the roof, and that's what it is. So if Tony Alford gets it going up there in Michigan as far as signing 5-star running backs, and they're not doing that at Ohio State, Carlos Loughlin is going to come under fire like Tony Alford did, and we will see how that turns out for him because I'm sorry, sir, but you are not in you're not in Oregon anymore. You're under the microscope at Ohio State, so you don't have the luxury of Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson coming in to the season this year. So you got James Peoples, so you're gonna have to build that room up. I am not going to say I feel bad for Carlos Loughlin. You signed on the dotted line. You took the job. That's what it is, being at the Ohio State University. I'm not pumping the train here for Ohio State, but I'm just saying that when it comes down to it, this team is going to be under a ton of scrutiny. So I just hope the national media understands that. And the only thing Ryan Day can really do to calm down the crazies is to go back to back. It's national championship every year or bust. So that's where I'm at on Ohio State. Some people can call me bullish, but in order for people to tamper down the expectations, I think it'll be lighter this year, but if they go out and have a bad performance, people are going to freak out. That's just how that's going to be. Of note here, Colorado hires Marshall Falk this offseason to work with the running backs. He is the running back coach at Colorado. I think that Colorado is doing some very positive things, and I think it's helping them on the recruiting trail. From what I've seen out there at Colorado, they're doing things in an unconventional way. I'm not saying it's wrong, right? But as long as they're a competitive group, I don't think you can complain, question it. It is what it is. But I believe they have Domata Pecco out there as an assistant. They got Warren Sapp out there as an assistant. Deion Sanders, obviously the head coach. Marshall Falk, running backs coach. So these are all guys that I grew up watching as a kid that played in the NFL. I mean, if I was a 17-year-old kid and I knew who Marshall Falk was, they got gold jackets around out there. So Deion Sanders is pulling out all the stops. He's bringing in the big guns at Colorado with no intensive purposes there. He's going down the Rolodex and hiring guys that I think he can win with. And that's, for where Colorado's at, I didn't get put on the Colorado trail until Matt McChesney popped up in the old timeline, and I've been following him and watching how the program has progressed. And I get it, Colorado has a ton of haters. There's no hiding behind that. They have a ton of haters. But from where they were, they progressed to get better every year. I get it. They lose a Heisman Trophy winner. They lose Shedeur Sanders. They lost a lot of guys. Jeremy Horn, Levante Wester. They lost probably 10 or 12 great guys. They lost Cash Cleveland into the transfer portal. I believe he's at Texas Tech, probably going to be their starting center. The speculation was he allegedly didn't get offered a scholarship. Don't know if that's true, but that was some of the things that the social media had out there. But, Colorado, they lost Phil Loholt, the offensive line coach, had to replace him. So I think Colorado is trending in the right direction. So that's just kind of my opinion on it. Colorado's a wait and see for me. Got to see what they look like against Georgia Tech. But also, here's a side note. Two teams that I wouldn't want to see week one, Georgia Tech or Air Force or any academy school that runs a triple option, because it's the game planning is not for an offense that you're going to see ever again in the offseason. I would either want to play them week one or at the end of the year, but Georgia Tech not really running the triple option. They got Hayes King. It's going to be interesting. I think that's going to be one of the more interesting matchups of the week one weekend, to be honest. And that's just where I'm at. I think they're going to strap him up and get him rolling. Hines Ward out there at Arizona State. Hines Ward, former Pittsburgh Steeler wide receiver, Super Bowl MVP, I do believe. So Hines Ward is a wide receivers coach, associate head coach to Kenny Dillingham. Oh, excuse me. So, yeah, and then rounding that out is DeMarco Murray at Oklahoma. I believe that's his alma mater, to be honest with you. So that is kind of some of the notable faces around college football, new faces and new places, as I would like to call it. So I think that where we're at and where we're heading here in the college football realm of things is interesting. Transitioning here to the Arch Manning stuff. This is his comments after his grandpa had the comments. He said, "Yeah, I don't know where he got that from. He texted me and apologized. I'm just taking it day by day by now." Translation is, Gramps, I don't know what I want to do. That is what I'm taking that as. I think I'm not shocked by that, but we'll have to see what Arch ends up doing ultimately. But here are the MGM put these tiers of blue bloods out. I don't have an issue with the first tier. Legacy blue bloods, yes. Oklahoma, USC, Miami, they haven't been good in 10 years. Texas is the cream of the crop. They're number one right now. We'll have to see. They got back with Mac. Cristobal needs to turn the corner. I think Notre Dame is turning the corner with Marcus Freeman. Matt Rule is got to build something. I think he had a complete overhaul rebuilding of that roster. And I think if I'm Matt Rule in Nebraska, Rome was not built in a day. That is what I would take from that. Texas has more resources, I think, than anybody on the list, and they just got to apply them where it needs to be. The Gen Z Blue Bloods, Georgia, Clemson. Clemson got really good a few years ago. Here's my thing with Oregon and Penn State being Gen Z Blue Bloods. The reason why I disagree with this is because they haven't won anything. Penn State's got one Big Ten title under Franklin, but they've won a lot of regular season games. I guess it's hard to argue that. But Oregon's won a couple Pac-12 titles, been to a couple natties, and hasn't won. That's just something to be said there. And then the other tier is the sport is better when they're good. Florida State, I disagree. A lot of people will come out, probably get the pitchforks up after me. I am a Florida State hater. They should have hired Dion when they had the chance. Same thing with Auburn. Auburn has a ton of resources too, but they hired Brian Harsin. They fired Gus Malzahn. Auburn has not been ranked in the preseason 25 in 5 years. I believe Grind of MPW Digital pointed that out. Florida, it's been rough since they fired Dan Mullen. Florida has had some issues since they fired Dan Mullen. That is no unsung secret there. Tennessee, the same thing. Ever since they won with Fulmer, and I believe 99, it hasn't gone well for Tennessee as well. Washington, it's been a few years. Kalen DeBoer brought them all the way back from the depths after Sarkisian left. It was rough out there in Washington. DeBoer brought him back. Now he's at Alabama. Got to see what Jed Fish can do to right the ship. Sometimes relevant. Ole Miss, yes, that's true. Wisconsin, yes, that's true. But they haven't been relevant since Brett Bielema. I think Kalani Sitake is going to get it turned around out there in BYU Utah. I think that Sitake got dealt a bad hand. The quarterback getting suspended and transferring, going to Tulane. I think that if he can put together a 6-6 squad, and I think Kalani Sitake's team's going to play really, really hard for him. I think they're bought in out there in BYU. I got a lot of faith in Kalani Sitake. It's probably not going to be what the fans want this year, but he's got to get a quarterback in there. And I think BYU's got resources they can spend. So I'm just saying that don't sleep on Kalani Sitake. They might have a down year this year, but that's just something to be said there. Michigan State, they had that one-off year with Mel Tucker. Post Antonio, Jonathan Scott or Smith, he's got his work cut out for him in East Lansing. Complete overhaul, rebuild, reloading that roster. Arizona State, I would think that Arizona State is kind of in the limbo. If Kenny Dillingham can duplicate the success that he had last year, Arizona State is equipped to run the Big 12. To be honest, I think they have a prime location out there in Tempe. I think that's where Arizona State's at. They have a prime location in Arizona, great weather. I believe they're building up their facilities to see what they can be. So I'll be interested to see what Arizona State can do going forward. Cincinnati, it's been rough since Fickles left. We'll have to see if they can get back to relevancy. They left the American to go to the Big 12. It hasn't been the smoothest transition, but we'll see where that shakes out. North Carolina, Belichick. we'll see if Belichick can make them relevant. I think you're throwing the name on there with Bill Belichick, so we'll have to see how that works. Also, if it doesn't go well, he's going to get crucified in the media, and I don't know how he's going to handle that in the media. The thing with North Carolina is it's either going to go really, really good or it's going to go really, really bad. Louisville, they are on the irrelevant because of one quarterback, I would contend two, Lamar Jackson, Teddy Bridgewater. So I think Louisville's been a formidable program in the past. Jeff Brom's there now. I think they're poised to make a run this year. He's got Miller Moss. It didn't work out there in Southern Cal with Lincoln Riley. So I'm not shocked by that it didn't work out with Lincoln Riley. I think Lincoln Riley's under immense pressure. He's got the number one recruiting class. Maybe he's figured something out there in Southern Cal. That's just something to be said. Texas A&M, even though I have an Aggies hat on, gig 'em. I think that Texas A&M has every resource in the book. They're up there with Texas. They have every resource in the book to be successful. They just have to translate that to being on the field. A lot of people say don't buy the Texas A&M stock. I think Mike Elko is different than Kevin Sumlin and Jimbo Fisher. Mike Elko, we trust. Texas Tech. Texas Tech has spent more than anybody in the transfer portal. I don't see how anybody can argue that. Texas Tech is one of those programs they can't win on the road. They've got to put that together down there at Tech. Or I think some seats are going to get hot. What do we have here? Throw this up. This is the All-American freshman team by All-American by On3. Devin Sanchez, Riley Pettijohn. Those are guys at Ohio State I would have my eye on. And one guy that's not on the list, Underwood's going to take all the headlines, but Verdell Brown III, the Florida wide receiver, Heartline was after him bad. When it comes to Ohio State recruiting, it's one or two ways. They either didn't spend the money or they typically will say, well, we cooled on him or we really didn't need him. So that's how that goes. Interesting statement here by John Summerall. John Summerall would like to have a home in a Superdome series with Brian Kelly. I find it very interesting that this was Summerall's quote. He says, "I don't know why we don't play. I want to play LSU." Well, I think I have a pretty good barometer on that because I don't know. LSU cannot take a loss to. They cannot take a loss to. How do I want to say this? They cannot afford to take a loss to a group of 5 opponent. That's what that comes down to. Since the SEC has gone to the 9th conference game, that is what I wanted to end the show with. The SEC going to the 9th conference game was all about money to me, because I think the TV people have their hand in this a lot. I think if I am ESPN or LSU, if I'm ESPN or their broadcast partners, ABC, it's hard to sell Mercer, Alabama. That's one thing. The SEC schedule is set up to where they have the first 3 games of the year are nothing burgers, and then in the middle of the heart of the SEC season, they take a week off essentially, and they play, Charleston Southern Miss, or, just somebody in that realm is what happens with the SEC schedule. I think that this format going forward to fix the competitive balance because the Big Ten was crying about playing 9 conference games opposed to the SEC only playing 8. Do I think that this will tamper down expectations in 26? No. I think that in 26 you'll see, because they play one more conference game, I get why the coaches didn't want to play it, because it's another opportunity to lose and already in a tough league, one of the tougher leagues in college football. But I would go out on a limb and say that I think that when it comes to this, they are going to try to fix having to use tiebreakers to determine who goes to the SEC championship, because I think last year was too big of a mess. Because A&M last year had a couple of losses. Like, even though I got the Aggies hat on, A&M had the Auburn loss, they had the Texas loss, and Notre Dame. Those were the only 3 teams that beat them, and they had a night game at Jordan Hare, which that's not an easy task. That is what you call a Hugh Freeze special. That is where that is at. But I think going forward, the SEC is going to try to right some of these wrongs, get this figured out, and get it moving in the right direction, because I don't think Greg Sankey, in my opinion, is going to agree to – I don't think he's ever going to agree to the automatic qualifiers outside of the conference champion, because the SEC makes money on that, and so does the Big Ten. Tony Batiti wants to do that because he wants guaranteed revenue, because I don't think the Big Ten's TV deal is going to be as lucrative going forward, because Tony Batiti is getting crucified, for one, for the Michigan stuff, 2, for the big noon kickoff. All the big games are at noon, shouldn't be at noon, but for some reason Fox does not want to compete with the SEC at night. I don't get it, but that's just kind of where I'm at on it. I think that at a certain point you're going to have to commit to playing night games, your big games at night. I don't know what Petiti's got up his sleeve. I would not be shocked with all the assets that ESPN is selling off. I think they're gearing up to take the Big Ten as well, and then that smells bad news for Fox, because I think the Fox could end up with MAC and Sun Belt teams. Not that I'm saying those leagues are bad, but I think ESPN could end up with having all of the Fox games. I think Fox might strictly be Big 12, and the ACC, I think in 2032, the ACC is going to be a partner at the dance without a dance partner, in my opinion. I think the Big Ten comes in. I think they take Syracuse and Boston College, and I think the SEC takes 4 teams. And if the 4th team, I get this right, I'll be on a planet unknown to man. But I think the 4 teams the SEC takes from the ACC, they'll have 220 league teams. I think you're going to have North Carolina. You're going to have Virginia. I think they're going to take Clemson if Clemson wants to come. And I think they take Notre Dame, because I know the Domers will be really upset with me about that, but I think Notre Dame will end up in the SEC. So that is where that is at. We're going to cut this off for tonight. We'll be back tomorrow, I think, noonish for Farmageddon. Then we'll have UNLV, Idaho State after that, and then we'll be flipping a couple of the other games. I think I'll have 2 games on. Phil Longo in the Western Kentucky kickoff at, I believe, 6:30, and then we'll have Stanford and Hawaii as the nightcap. And then on that programming note, we're going to have separate streams set up. So just a heads up, when that game ends, we're going to go to the next stream. So with everything being said, college football is back tomorrow. The season is finally here. No more charts, no more graphs, no more none of that. So I appreciate everybody watching tonight. If you can do me a big favor, hit that like and subscribe button and tune in tomorrow. If you're looking for an alternative broadcast, that should kick us up in the algorithm. But I appreciate everybody watching tonight. Sorry for the mishaps at the beginning of the show. Got to get the camera fixed. So that is where we're at. So everybody have a good Friday night, and the season opens tomorrow. So we will see you later.